Hi, my name is Darren Bartlett, and I love talking about African affairs, especially current affairs. And that's why I'm asking that you should subscribe to support this journey in the news that's happening on our continent. Now, over the weekend, we had protests that were happening in Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast, the West African country, there because the members of the opposition or supporters of the opposition had gone on the streets protesting against the decision of Alassane to run for the fourth term in office, and that's the current president of Ivory Coast. And here's the thing. Many opposition key figures have been arrested and barred from participating in the elections that are going to be taking place on the 25th of October. And this is not something that is very new. And if Alassane is to be presented with real competition in the election, then he should let Babbo run for presidency and other opposition members who are running for that. But most times the script is just the same across the continent of Africa, that incumbent presidents who are actually in office, by, let's put it this way, the constitutions or the laws are amended to enable them stay in power and run. Most times they don't allow competition to come against them, and that's why they will arrest all the opposition leaders in jail. In fact, if they are to run for president and they are successful on the ballot paper, many times there's a lot of difficulty in them managing to traverse around the countries to be able to talk to their supporters to run for president. So it's always very difficult. So I'm not surprised that what happened in Ivory Coast and the protests, barring opposition members from participating in a presidential election, is not something new. We've seen it in Zimbabwe. Morgan Tsvangirai, do you remember the former prime minister there, where things gotten so heated? He was arrested, beaten, all these other things you can talk about. And later on, after an election, he's granted to become the prime minister of the country. Come to Uganda, where Dr. Kizza Besigye, who was the main opposition member in Uganda, was arrested a couple of times. Even as I speak now, he's in jail because of different charges that are put against him. Has trial begun? No. But anyway, I know that he has been a presidential candidate over 5 times, about 4 to 5 times, and contesting against President Yoweri Museveni. But if you remember the first time, well, it was okay until he ran into exile. He was with the FDC, came back, arrested, nominated while he was in jail. So these things happen on the African continent. If you want, you can try Rwanda, where you see members of the opposition are always arrested. Usually, someone who comes and says wants to run against the president, President Kagame, and is arrested. I can remember the ladies too, have been arrested a couple of times. So I see this all the time. You can go even to Cameroon, where the mayor's of the opposition, the opposition candidates have actually been barred from contesting as presidential candidates. So usually when you see that the members of the opposition are being oppressed or jailed or things like that, the likelihood of that election to be as transparent as it is, despite the fact that they could have actually committed crimes, that's the thing. And there's a very thin line of breaking the law and being on the right side. So usually the eye is on them, that anything slight like this, anything small, is likely to land them in jail. You can go, we've talked about Cameroon. You can go on and on. Very many countries have had the same history. And so Tanzania, who are going to even have the election when this October as well. Tundu Lissu is in jail. Again, charges like treason. He's there, and he's the guy who was expected to run against Suluhu, the current president of Tanzania. So these things are not new. They always happen, and this is why the people in Ivory Coast decided, let's go on the streets, because this is not something they agreed in. By the way, let's talk about President Alassane a little bit. You know how he came to power? He contested for an election in 2010, which ideally, according to Gbagbo there, the then president there, he refused to leave power. And for them, they felt like he is taking to power, yet he had actually lost at the election that happened. It so much happened that some countries were willing to move in an army technical way. Senegal were willing to move the army into the country to make sure that there is peace. There is no violence that breaks out, but violence actually broke out. And guess who was picked from his bunker? Former President Gbagbo with his wife were picked out of the bunker where he was hiding. And that's how he was removed to power, went to France, and was all over these places there. And he's coming back to stand. He wanted to stand as a president, which he has not been allowed. And here's a guy who has been in power since 2010 till today, and he wants to run for the fourth time as a president of Ivory Coast. So he forgets how he came to power, and that's how he wants to stick to power. No, that's just my thought. I mean, you've been in power all this time, and you remember very well how you came to power. You talked about rule of law, you talked about people who are sticking to power and all these other things, but it's the same script that he has written. Just brought back the history to the books. In my view, if President Alassane decides to stay in power in Ivory Coast and he runs and he actually wins the election, it's going to be very difficult to get him out of power. He's going to stay there for quite a long time. I don't write the history of Africa, but I see these things. We see them. Me and you know them. We can talk about all the countries: Congo, Brazzaville, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, Cameroon. We can go all over the country. You go to Zimbabwe, where they had President Mugabe for a very long time. I just talked about Shanghai, Mugabe Shanghai. You can go all over the place, Djibouti, and all these other places. So it's always the same script. So if we predict, and if I predict and say, this is what happens here, those are the signs that the president you have, as long as they're in power, they'll stay in power. So the protests may not yield much, but maybe the situation may change because Gbagbo was taken out from a protest. My name is Dara. Let's see what happens in Ivory Coast come the 25th of October, whether the opposition members will be in power or will be on a ballot paper or not. It will be an interesting election to watch out. So let's watch out for Ivory Coast, let's watch out for Cameroon, let's watch out for Tanzania, let's watch out for Malawi, Central African Republic. These countries have elections coming up, and those will be very interesting elections to look at. My name is Darren. See you in the next one.